Hey everybody, this is Dan Reeser. I'm VP of Growth at Acala and Karura. And today I'm going to be giving you an overview of DeFi, Polkadot, and Kusama, and then most importantly, an overview of Acala and Karura. First, I'm going to start with some basics around what DeFi is, why this movement has kind of started, and what problems it solves. Then we'll move into some necessary context of Polkadot and Kusama before we move into Acala and Karura. Crypto and DeFi, of course, started around 2008, 2009, and really what decentralized finance is trying to solve is this problem of access to the financial system. So billions of people around the world, depending on what country they live in, have much different access to the financial system to earn better outcomes on their finances than others in kind of more people who are just a bit luckier. There's also some issues around governments. Different governments around the world have more or less control over the financial system of their countries. And people who live in places where the government does have more control over the economy and has created problems like inflation, DeFi creates a way for people to have access to a new financial system for better opportunities on their money. So this new system is more open. It requires less restrictions, so you can access it sometimes without an identification, without a bank account, without a credit score. So a much more open financial system that we're all kind of building together now. The main categories of DeFi are really a reflection of a lot of the primary categories of the traditional finance world that have made their way into DeFi. So you've got money markets, which is kind of like peer-to-peer borrowing and lending, derivatives, payments, decentralized exchanges. Another category here is stablecoins, which is very important for the DeFi ecosystem because, of course, you've got volatile assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum that can vary. And then you've got stablecoins, which allow people to hold something that actually kind of retains a stable peg at a certain value. This was pretty shocking to me when I made this slide. Going back just 1 year ago, in April 2020, the amount of total value locked in DeFi was around 800 million. And fast forward to today, this has done about an 82 or 83x on just the previous year in total value locked in DeFi protocols. DeFi summer, in summer 2020, at least Northern Hemisphere summer, was what kind of set off this trend. There was a lot of new teams, new liquidity flowing into DeFi that really set off this trend that we still see continuing today. Money markets, Compound is one of the best and kind of pioneering teams in the Ethereum DeFi space. This is an example of one of the key use cases of DeFi now, where you see here on the left, you've got a supply market, and then on the right, you have borrowers. On the left, if I have DAI as my stablecoin, I could go in and provide liquidity to that market and earn 6.8%, at least on this day. Same on the right, if I needed to go out and, say I thought Bitcoin was going to go up, or I had a need for a stablecoin, I could go and borrow DAI with something as collateral, as long as I'm willing to pay that interest rate on that stablecoin. So this is where it becomes kind of this peer-to-peer lending pool hosted by Compound. Stablecoins is another important aspect of DeFi, where you've got 4 primary types of stablecoins. You've got prominent names like USDC, which is kind of a Coinbase token, which is fiat collateralized. So you've got actual US dollars in a bank backing every USDC token that is issued into the market. And then the third one here, you can see crypto collateralized. So these are kind of algorithmic crypto-backed stablecoins. MakerDAO's DAI is the most prominent example of this. And Acala and Karura are both building our own stablecoin. So we've got the Acala dollar, AUSD, as you can see here on the slide, and then KUSD for our sister network, Karura, which is the Karura dollar. One example here, Value, is a team building out of Colombia. They're actually building with Substrate technology, same as Acala is building with, and they have proven a really cool example of a stablecoin being used in the real world. So they've got a lot of people in Colombia who need to send money home to their family and friends in Venezuela, and they've sent over $8 million home using the value application using stablecoins. Uniswap is another primary example of a major DeFi protocol on Ethereum, which is what's called an automated market maker decentralized exchange. So this is a simple swap from one token to another. And the way that's made possible is because on the back end there's people providing liquidity to every pair on Uniswap. In return for providing liquidity to that pair, they actually earn LP tokens and earn rewards on these liquidity provider tokens. So now that we have some background in DeFi and in that whole ecosystem, prominent examples of Ethereum DeFi, let's move on to Polkadot and why Polkadot was created. So the person who invented the Ethereum virtual machine and the person who created the Solidity programming language itself, he being Gavin Wood, realized very early on that Ethereum was not going to scale, it wasn't going to work, and fast forward to now, 2021, he was right. Look at the gas fees on Ethereum. Ethereum can't scale. Everyone's waiting on Ethereum 2.0, which is going to take years to deliver. So in the meantime, Gavin and Rob Habermeyer and Peter Shaban co-founded Polkadot. They also built Kusama, the kind of wild cousin network to Polkadot, which I'll get into next. Gavin created Polkadot because there was this need to create a multi-chain ecosystem versus these individual isolated blockchains like Bitcoin and like Ethereum. There was also a need to add customization to blockchain building. So platforms like Ethereum it's what's called a layer 1 blockchain, but they're trying to do everything with just one chain. It wasn't customized or optimized for any specific purpose. With Substrate, which is the framework that Gavin created for building on Polkadot and Kusama, with Substrate we can actually custom build blockchains and alter the blockchain at the core level for a specific use. So in Akala and Karura's case, we have optimized the core of our blockchain platform, which is a layer 1 equivalent to Ethereum. We've optimized that for DeFi specifically. We will also, when we launch on Akala on Polkadot, we'll be plugging into this existing network of other blockchains that we can communicate value and data with, and also potentially even more importantly, the security of Polkadot. So Polkadot is now a $40+ billion network, so all of that value is held within these validator nodes, and all those validators are able to help kind of validate transactions for accuracy and also secure all the parachains that connect to the Polkadot relay chain, as you can see in this diagram here. Polkadot will also not only connect blockchains within Polkadot, but it will also bridge to existing networks like Ethereum and like Bitcoin. And then as I mentioned, we've got Kusama as well. Kusama is the exact same code base, the same architecture as Polkadot with this relay chain in the middle, and then all these parachains are these customized blockchains built on top of Kusama's layer 0 meta protocol, as we call it. Polkadot and Kusama will exist together, and this pink dot in the middle is meant to show you that these two networks will be bridged as soon as both are live. So anything built on Kusama will be able to communicate with any parachain or application on Polkadot. Kusama is slightly different than Polkadot in that, one, it's faster, and not in terms of transaction speed, but in terms of how quickly you can get things done and approved through governance. So developers love Kusama because you can actually push code changes much quicker. It takes 7 days to upgrade Kusama versus 28 days to get approvals through governance on Polkadot. Kusama is also what I like to call an innovation network, also sometimes called a canary network. But this is where innovation will happen. You can test things on testnet and then bring them to Kusama, which is a real world environment with real value. And on Kusama is when you really start to see how things work out in the wild. Just like Polkadot, Kusama is a proof of stake network. So the validators are running proof of stake, and then you can also stake KSM to earn staking rewards as you hold KSM. And as I mentioned, where Polkadot and Kusama will be bridged, we've used this strategy also in the way that we launched our network. So we're building Acala, which is the DeFi hub of Polkadot. We are also building Karura, which is the DeFi hub of Kusama. So a lot of times people ask, what will the future be for Karura once Acala launches? The answer is that both Acala and Karura will be running in parallel together. Acala will make Karura better, and Karura will make Acala better, just like the relationship between Polkadot and Kusama, where they'll continue to operate in parallel together. Acala and Karura were both founded by these four people on the slide. You've got Rui Tao, our CEO, Betty, our COO. I work with them quite a bit. They're both more on the business side, but both are also very technical engineering minds, product people with great experience, not only in the blockchain world, but also in traditional product development. Then you've got Fu Yao on the upper right. So Fu Yao is he's kind of leading and managing everything in China, based in Shanghai. He's also the founder and CEO of Polka Wallet, and met up with Rui Tao, Betty, and Brian, I think about a couple years ago at a hackathon, and the four of them created the networks, Acala and Karura, together. And then last but not least, you've got Brian Chen. Brian is one of the best Substrate developers in the world. He's our CTO and leads all of our development. So Brian also founded and leads the Substrate Developer Academy and continues to build and kind of give back to the Substrate community as he grows the number of developers who are building with the Substrate framework. Acala is backed by several top firms, so Pantera, Coinbase Ventures, DCG, Polychain Capital, just to name a few, Hypersphere from our friend Jack, and several others on the slide here, and then many others as well. So let's get into Acala and Karura. So Acala is two things. It's a platform for building applications on top of, as well as our own set of applications that we've built on our blockchain. So this is kind of a new category of development that I haven't seen done before, where our team is actually launching the blockchain itself, a layer 1 blockchain like Ethereum, while also launching applications on top of that chain. So our decentralized exchange, you could think of as similar to Uniswap. Our borrowing market for the Acala dollar and Karura dollar, you could think of as similar to Maker. And then we've got liquid staking as well. So this is essentially like a layer 1 blockchain like Ethereum, launching from day one with Maker and Uniswap on top, plus liquid staking. So very excited to get this out and live. This diagram helps illustrate what I just mentioned. So the Acala DEX, the liquid staking product, and the AUSD stablecoin are built into the layer 1 blockchain itself. And then on top of our blockchain, we've built front-end applications that leverage these DeFi primitives, as we call them, that are built into the blockchain. So when Acala launches, you'll not only be able to build applications on Acala, but you'll be able to use all the applications that we've built ourselves. And then of course at the bottom here you've got Polkadot, which is the network, the multi-chain network, kind of securing Acala and providing cross-chain capability. These are the three products that I just mentioned, and then the fourth one I'll just mention very quickly. The Decentralized Sovereign Wealth Fund, or our treasury. This will be built up over time in order to help create self-sustainability for Acala and for Karura. In Acala's case, we hope to build up this Decentralized Sovereign Wealth Fund enough so that in the future, when we need to bid on a slot in a parachain auction, we can actually bid with our own sovereign wealth fund instead of needing to raise KSM or DOT through a crowd loan. When Rui Tao, Betty, Fu Yao, and Brian were deciding where to build Acala, there were several options. There was Ethereum 2, there was Cosmos, there were several different choices that they evaluated, but of course they decided to choose Polkadot. But why did they choose Polkadot? It's because of these kind of 6 core things. The cross-chain ability and interoperability, the ability to use Substrate to customize the chain specifically for DeFi, the ability to handle extremely high transaction rates or transaction volume through Polkadot, The ability to govern the network on chain, so getting the whole community of ACA holders to help take part in governance, versus with Ethereum, just one person or a group of founders get to decide the future of the network. The plug-and-play security is a huge aspect where we don't have to actually go out and recruit our own set of validators to secure our network. That's why we want to earn a slot on Polkadot and plug into this existing network of security. And then last in the bottom right is the ability to upgrade without forking. So over time, we'll be able to upgrade the blockchain itself without needing to fork the community like we've seen with maybe ETH and ETH Classic and other communities over time. Here's a few of our products, just some screenshots of them. On YouTube, you can see some product demos of our products, and also on our applications website, apps.acala.network, you can actually go in and use them live on testnet. So this is what our AUSD product looks like, where people can actually come in and collateralize, for example, Bitcoin, and take out a loan of AUSD with their Bitcoin as collateral without ever having to sell their Bitcoin. Liquid DOT staking is the process of staking DOT to earn interest on your DOT. But while your DOT is staked and earning staking rewards, you also receive what's called LDOT, or liquid DOT. And this is kind of like a receipt for your DOT that is staked. And the LDOT that you hold will actually increase in value. The number will increase because it's going to be reflecting the returns that your underlying staked DOT are earning. With that LDOT, you can actually, just like the name says, it becomes liquid. So you can come and use your LDOT and use that within all of our DeFi platforms, like the last slide that I just showed you with AUSD. I could stake DOT, take out LDOT, and then with the LDOT, I could collateralize that and take out a loan for AUSD and use that for whatever purpose I wanted. The Acala DEX looks like this. So there will be trading pairs that you can trade. So in this example, it's Acala ACA and the AUSD stablecoin. And the way this is enabled is because on the back end, there's a whole pool of liquidity where people are earning rewards for providing liquidity to certain pairs. So in this case, if I'm trading on the ACA and AUSD pair, I would be using liquidity from people who are providing liquidity to that pair on the back end. I won't go through all of these token utility use cases for ACA, but at its most basic level, ACA is the governance token for Acala and will be used for processing all the transaction fees on the network. So now let's get into Karura. Karura is a platform just like Acala, a blockchain platform, and a set of applications all kind of optimized for innovation and experimentation on Kusama. So this is going to be a really fun network to be involved in because there's going to be a lot of new products launching here, trying out new risk parameters, new features that will go to Karura, and then if proven, we'll move on to Acala. Karura's, what we will be launching this first on Kusama, and the upcoming Parachain auction is all about Karura. Karura will be launching on Kusama, and this layer 1 blockchain will have the same DeFi primitives as Acala does. So in this case, the Karura DEX, the liquid staking for KSM instead of for DOT on Acala, and then the Karura dollar KUSD as the stablecoin. The Karura apps that we're building, that we've already built on top of our blockchain, will leverage all those products that have been built into the blockchain itself. And here's a look at the UI at the application layer. So on the last slide, what I showed you up here, these apps are then, let me go back. These apps look like this. So you've got, this would be like creating a loan. On the left, you could go and do a swap, do your liquid staking. So this will all be ready the day we launch on Kusama. Just to reiterate, Kusama and Polkadot will be bridged, and Karura and Acala will continue to operate together even after Acala launches. After Acala launches, We will be operating 2 networks in parallel, and those will continue to operate together. The distribution of the KAR supply looks like this. So we reduced the amount of tokens going to the founding team and shifted that to the community. We've also got some backers and early backers from when we first started the project. And then when you break down the community side, we have auction rewards for the Parachain auction and liquidity program, which I'll walk through next. Some ecosystem development and some rewards that are being kind of reserved, as well as treasury allocation to keep in the Karura treasury for development of the network. Same token utility for Karura as Acala. This will be used for transaction fees and governance of the network, as well as several other different use cases like deploying smart contracts and other use cases. So how do we launch on Kusama? We need to win an auction against other Parachain teams in order to launch in this slot here on Kusama. So that process looks like this. What you can see here where this trophy is, this is the biggest event from here to here. This is the Parachain auction where we and other teams are bidding against each other in an auction to try to win this first slot on Kusama. The goal for the Karura team is absolutely to win the auction number 1. We want to be the first team to launch on Kusama. Before the auction starts, there will also be this thing called a crowd loan that opens. A crowd loan is actually how the community can contribute KSM, as you see here, to our crowd loan so that we can use all the KSM that we have in our crowd loan as our bid in the auction. So when we win the auction, Karura will then launch on Kusama, and when that happens, all the KSM that was contributed back here to the crowd loan will be locked in the Kusama relay chain. It will not be touched, it can't be touched by the team at all. And then at the same time, the native token of Karura will be issued to all the contributors at a 12-to-1 minimum ratio. So KAR gets distributed to everyone who contributed KSM. And then Karura would launch, all of the DeFi applications would be live, and we would be kind of in business. And then at the end of the 48-week slot, all the KSM that was contributed by anyone who participated in the crowd loan would then be returned to them. So this is what the Karura crowd loan will look like. We will start with a minimum of 12 KAR for every 1 KSM. And this is the reward that everyone who contributes KSM in the crowd loan would get in KAR. So depending on the participation, the amount of KAR could be much higher than 12, but this is just the baseline that we've set. And then down here you can see the 30%. What this is referring to is that 30% of the tokens that are distributed to contributors will be liquid when the network launches. The other 70% will then vest over the remainder of the 48 weeks, so gradually every day. Now, in terms of the liquidity mining program, another thing that I'm really excited to get started. So 19% of the first year's circulating supply of KAR will be distributed in the form of liquidity mining or liquidity provider programs. This translates to 6% of the total supply. And just keep in mind, the supply of Karura is fixed. It will never increase. So pretty significant opportunity to be involved in the early liquidity providing program. Liquidity mining rewards can be distributed in 3 primary ways. So through providing liquidity in the DEX, through minting KUSD stablecoins, and then for staking KSM for liquid KSM or LKSM. These interest rates or these APYs will definitely vary over time. There's going to be times when certain trading pairs or certain protocols need more liquidity, and in that case, the APY would rise for the ones that need more liquidity and potentially decline for the ones who are sufficiently liquid at the time. So this is an example of one person and having the ability to earn these these liquidity mining rewards through these three main mechanisms. So minting stable coins for a specific APY at that time, providing liquidity to the DEX, and then minting LKSM. These numbers here are not final or set, and these will continually vary and kind of be adjusted. But this is what the DEX could look like. One of the first pairs that will go live is the KAR to KSM pair. So there will be rewards for that pair at some APY given the day. There could also be other pairs like KSM, KUSD, KUSD BTC, and this will all continue to evolve over time. Also, with the stablecoin, we will see liquidity mining rewards for people who actually go and take out a loan of KUSD. For minting a stablecoin, by taking out a loan, you would earn additional KUSD on that reward. And then last, LKSM, so there will be additional incentives for minting LKSM through the action of actually staking KSM, and those rewards would be distributed in KAR. There's also cross-chain assets that will be making their way to Karura. So these are yet to be finalized, but things like Bitcoin and Ethereum, if we needed more Bitcoin liquidity from, say, one of the bridges, we could also incentivize people to bring Bitcoin over to Karura. So that's it. Thanks for the patience and sitting through this. I hope you learned something new. I know we have a team watching at the meetup here in China. We've also got our team we're online, we're always on Discord or on Twitter, so feel free to ask us questions. One thing that I would encourage you to do after today is to go to apps.acala.network. Everything that you've seen today is live on testnet and ready to launch as soon as we win the auction on Karura, on Kusama, and the auction on Polkadot. So definitely go in and test out these things. You can get testnet tokens through that website and then try things out. Our goal is to win the first parachain auction on Kusama with Karura, and our goal is to win the first parachain auction on Polkadot with Acala. So we really appreciate your support in helping achieve this goal. If you have the desire to follow us on any of our social channels, so there's the link tree for Acala and a link tree link for Karura. We've basically put every different link that we have in the community on these websites, so you can find anywhere to follow us there. So that's it. Hopefully you guys have a good day, good night. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk soon. Bye.